Hello, this video is going to go over how to add split screen local multiplayer to your project. So that's everybody is using the same keyboard. Because when I was looking for tutorials to send to students to do this, I noticed they were all unnecessarily convoluted or just useless. Like they didn't show how to actually do the inputs for separate players or have different camera rotation for different players. These things are not super functionally complicated. So I don't know why there's not a video on it yet, but it can be a little bit tricky. So that's why I am making this video. If you're adding this to your project, I guarantee that you'll be able to understand everything that we're doing. Because once you get over the tricky stuff, it's not that hard to understand. So what I have here is basically a brand new project. It's the project from the last video I did where I was showing how to add your own unique meshes to the Unreal 5 skeleton. So that's all I have in this project right now. But functionally, it's just like having a default project with using the default mannequin. Except later I'm going to show how to make both of the players different meshes. So I wanted to make them visually distinct. So the only thing I added to this project was I added two different meshes. One of which is this student created mesh, Celeste. So, but you can use Manny and Quinn if you want. But I recommend obviously using your own meshes. If you need to learn how to add those to the Unreal 5 skeleton, you can look at the video that I posted before this video. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to Edit Project Settings and just change a couple of things here. So Edit Project Settings, Maps and Modes, and here's where all the multiplayer stuff is. I learned that Unreal has its own default split screen that you can use. So all you have to do is check Use Split Screen. And then we're doing 2-player right now. For 2-player, if you're doing like a puzzle game, RPG game, open world exploration, you could do it horizontal or vertical. It's whatever your preference is. I think horizontal looks way better for like RPG games, where vertical split screen is better for like first-person shooter games. If you ever played like Call of Duty or Black Ops with your friends, it's always vertical. But I think horizontal is way better for like puzzle games. So that's what we're gonna do right now. And the first step is to create the extra player. So we're going to do that in the level blueprint. You can also do that in the game mode. But in the top toolbar, this little blueprint icon, this little 3 squares, click that, open level blueprint. And remember that because you don't want to forget where your level blueprint is. And in event begin play, I'm going to create local player. And I'm going to set it to 1. So the default one is 0, and now we're creating the additional one, which is 1. So I'm going to compile that and go back, and literally if we play right now, oh, I can see that it's horizontal. I actually wanted it to be vertical. I'm going to go switch that to vertical. And if I play, that's it. It's just one setting. So now let's make it so that we can control the second one, obviously, which is what we want to do, and give them separate meshes. And we're getting these errors. So we're getting these errors because it's trying to add this mapping context before the player controller is actually set, I believe, is the problem. So when we set this in the level blueprint, this controller ID is referring to the player controllers. So I'm going to open up, move my head out the way. You could just find your third-person controller, or you can open the World Settings panel, Window, World Settings, and then go to it from here. Player Controller Class. Open this up, the Player Controller. Go to the Event Begin Play node, and we're going to, instead of playing that right at the beginning, we're going to play On Possess. Because this is the code snippet that is adding the mapping context. So instead of calling it at the beginning, we're calling it on when the pawn actually gets possessed. So we'll never call this before it is actually being controlled by the player. So next, we're actually going to go to this mapping context and add some new inputs for player 2. So you can either go to it from here by clicking the magnifying glass, or you can just go to the input folder, and it's right here. So first, I'm going to open up this action folder here, and we have IA move, which is input action move. I'm gonna Control D, duplicate it, and do IA move P2 for player 2. So we need to name the inputs for player 2. Then I'm gonna go back to the input folder, open up the IMC default, go over to the corner, top left, open up the default key mappings, and we're gonna make a new one for player 2. So I'm gonna hit the plus button, that's to the right of the mappings, and locate that move player 2 input action that we just created. I wish that you could just duplicate the IA move, but you can't. So for player 2, we're going to take all of these up, down, left, right, and put those into player 2 instead of player 1. So right now, player 1 is moving both with WASD and up, down, left, right. But we want player 2 to use the arrow keys. So, I mean, really, you just have to copy what's up there in player 2. So right now, I just hit this plus button and add it up. Plus button, click the none drop down, add down. Plus button again, click the none, drop down, add left and right. None drop down, just added left, now I'm adding right. What the heck did I do? I closed it. All right, and then you're not quite done. First you have to open up, and you have to add a modifier. So open up the modifier drop down, click the plus button, changed it from none to swizzle input axis values. And you can see that if you open up from the regular move, you can see the modifiers it's using and just copy the exact same stuff. So I already know that up is using the swizzle input axis values. Down is also using the swizzle input axis value. And down is also using a negate modifier. So add 2 modifiers. To down. Left is using, let's see, it's using a negate modifier. So let's add that. Basically just inverting it. And then I think right is using no modifier. So we're going to leave right alone. So now that we added those to player 2, let's delete them from player 1. So player 1 should only be WASD. Player 2 should be the arrow keys. And then let's go to the third person, BP third person. So not the third person controller. We want to open our actual character blueprint, BP third person character. Because this is where we're doing all the input stuff. So if you go to the event graph and you go to this movement input section, you can see enhanced action on AI move. That's all good for the player 1. Let's leave that alone, right click and create IA move player 2. And we did this in class. We're going to right click the action value and split struct pin so that it looks like this one over here. And then we're going to call our own move function. So you see this move function. If you double click to open it, it's got the functionality for moving. We're just going to use that same stuff. But we can't just duplicate it. We have to, well, I am going to duplicate it actually. So I'm going to go over to the functions panel on the left and Control D on the move function. I'm going to name it move player 2. Because right now it's the target here for all of these movement methods are targeting self, which is, but we want to target player 2, the new pawn that we made. So in move player 2, make sure that you're in this one, in the move player 2 function, not the move. We're going to right click and search for get pawn, I think. Get player pawn. Get player pawn, and the player index, what's that going to be? That's going to be 1. Because remember, we have 0, player 2 is 1. And then basically for all of these targets, there should be 4 of them here. We're going to set the target from self. We're going to change it to this return value of this player pawn. So there's one in the get control rotation node. There's one in the add movement pin node. There's one in the other get control rotation node. And then there's finally one in the final add movement input node. And I'm making these reroute nodes just by double clicking on the line. You could also just copy and paste this and, 4 times. But this looks cleaner the way that I did it. All right, looking good. Let's go back to the event graph, pull out of the input action for our player 2's movement, and then call move player 2. So it's 2 different things. Now, I think there's some other things that we have to do with the camera. With this spring arm component. So if you mouse over the camera boom component over here on the left components panel, you can see that in the parentheses, it's a spring arm. So we're on the spring arm right now. I think we have to check use pawn control rotation, which it's already checked. Let's just test it. Oh yeah, because we still have to we have to look at the rotation. We have to handle that. Because right now the camera isn't rotating. And because every computer is only going to have one mouse, you don't want just one player to be able to rotate their screen, right? But look at that. I used the arrow keys and player 2's moving. That's awesome. That is really cool. And that wasn't so hard at all. The other part I forgot to mention is, I think it's already set, but you want to make sure that inherit yaw is set as well. So, okay. Moving on to the camera. I'm in my third-person blueprint, third-person character blueprint, and I'm going to create an event tick node. And here is where we're going to make the camera follow the player's rotation, whatever direction the player is facing for each player controller. And I'm actually going to alt click on that move because I don't want to move with the mouse. Move camera with the mouse. So here, let's get controller. You don't want to get the player controller because that's going to get the default one. That's going to get player 1 by default. We want to just get controller and then cast. I'm going to pull out of this return value and cast to player controller. So that we get whatever controller we are currently using. And then from here, as player controller, I'm going to set control rotation. And then to make it smoother, I'm going to do R interp2. All right, for current, I'm going to get control rotation. For the current pin, for target, I'm going to get actor rotation. Making sure the target, we just leave it as self. Then for delta time, I'm going to get world delta seconds. And then for interpolation speed, I'll set it to like 5. And this is going to make it smoother. Okay. Let's test that out. All right, the camera is moving when I rotate. The camera is event, and you can mess with that interpolation value. And it's doing the same thing for player 2. And also, I would make it so that the camera is a little bit higher, looking down, or a little bit farther away, because right now I feel like it's a little bit of a limited view. And maybe that they turn, I don't know, I think it's fine. Yeah, we're going to keep it simple. This looks good. Both players are moving. Both players' cameras are moving independently. I think this is a success so far. So one final step is let's make them different characters. What kind of game is going to have both of the characters be the exact same? All right, so once again, BP, third-person character, whatever your character blueprint is. Now we're going to the event begin play node. So we're just going to spawn a new mesh for our characters right when the game starts. So let's, the same way we casted to the player controller down here, we could just copy and paste that up here to our begin play and connect it up. And how are we differentiating between our characters? We're looking at their player controller IDs. So right now, player 1's ID 0, player 2's controller ID 1, right? That's on the level blueprint. So let's find those IDs. So as player controller, I'm going to pull out of that output pin and get, I believe, local player controller ID. That's what we want. And this is just returning, the return value is returning the value of the player controller that we're using right now as an integer. So there's this very strong handy node. I'm just going to right click and search for switch on int, which is just going to do different things based on whatever integer you pass into this. So this is a very powerful node. You could do a ton of stuff with this. I'm going to connect the Y execution pins, connect the return value into the selection. And so whatever we're giving to it, whatever we're passing here, we can add pins and do different things. So if that thing is 0, then it's going to do what comes out of 0. If that thing equals 1, it's going to do what comes out of 1, right? So player 1 is passing 0. So let's actually drag out our mesh component from the components panel, press Control and drop it so that we get it. And then we're going to pull out of the mesh and do set skeletal mesh asset. Set skeletal mesh asset. And it's as simple as that. So player 1, actually I'm going to connect that to the 0 thing. Player 1, I want to show SKM Celeste. So that student model is what's going to be set for player 1. I'm going to duplicate that mesh. For player 2, set skeletal mesh, I want to set it to the other model that I imported, which his name was Prince Hall. And then that's coming out of 1, right? So theoretically, that should work if I compile and save. Let's see. Let's test it. Fingers crossed. No, it didn't work. Yeah. Something went wrong. Something went wrong. So if something is not working, and I'm going to touch on this because I think it's important to know, we need to check if this is even going off, if this code is functioning, so that we can know where to start, so we can know where to look, right? So this is something that we should talk about in class more, which we will. So at the end of setting mesh 1, I'm going to do a print string, and then in the in string, I'm going to set it to set mesh 1. So if I see this text, I know that mesh 1 is being set. I'm going to do the same thing for number 2, and I'm going to say set mesh 2. If I see that, I know mesh 2 is I know that code is running. So I press play, I look in the corner, I see set mesh 1, that ran, but set mesh 2, I did not see. So I know that this code down here is not going off for whatever reason. But now I know where to look. So I'm assuming that for whatever reason, we're spawning player 2 also in begin play. So maybe that's spawning after this is being called. So it doesn't. So by the time this is being called, there's no player controller with ID 1 that it can point to. So let's we want this to be called after, right? Because we wanted to have that player controller ID. So right after the begin play node, I'm going to press D and click to create a delay node. And then it's 0.2. Honestly, I think 0.1 will be enough time for that other thing to play. Yeah. So that should hopefully give this enough time to spawn the second player. Just a little delay node. And it worked. But wow, that does not look right. But let's just test the functionality. So they could move. The other one sees the other one moving. He should be bigger. Okay, so if you want to make so let's say that happens to you, like one mesh is too small. Obviously, you could re-import it at the correct size, which is probably what you should do. But if you're lazy like me, you could just pull out of the mesh and then do set scale or set world scale 3D. And then connect that at the end. And then set the scale here to something bigger. So like 1.4, 1.4, 1.4. And then now if I play, it looks a little bit better. And there you go. I mean, that's like pretty much perfectly functioning split screen for like an open world game or a puzzle game or something like that. And then it will look really good if we fix the camera. So I just did that by going into the viewport for the character blueprint, third person character, and clicking the follow camera, just dragging it upwards and rotating it down a little bit. So that'll be just whatever your preference is, and then you press play. And yeah, I think a camera angle like that looks a lot better for an open world game or a puzzle game or something like that. Oh wow. I just realized we didn't do the jumping. So the jumping is not different. The jump button is the same for they both apply to player 1. But you would fix that the same exact way we did the controls. So if you go to the event graph, if you just quick review of everything we did, we went to the input actions, So we would make a new input action that's like IA jump player 2. And then we'd call that here. And then we'd make a jump function for player 2. Or actually in the IMC, the mapping context, right? We would have player 1's jump be space or whatever, and then player 2's jump would be whatever you want it to be. And then you'd call it here, and then you'd make a new function for player 2 called jump player 2. And that's basically it. But every game is going to be different. Some people are going to have jump. Some people are going to do whatever. I think it's more important that you go through and do that yourself, because I think that will be more conducive to actually learning and remembering. Because you'll have to do all kinds of different stuff depending on your game. Like player 1 might have different abilities than player 2 and so on. So I think doing the jump yourself is like good training wheels, and then you can move on to more complicated stuff. But yeah, I think people were spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to do this, and it's like I'd rather people actually spend time making their games than learning how to do something that's a little bit tricky but ultimately very simple to do like this. So yeah, hopefully this helps people get past this point and move on to the actual fun parts of making games. But that's it for this one. Bye.